Look at this, Mrs. W.
That is quite spectacular, isn't it?
It's a lovely head of broccoli. Yeah, isn't it just? So we'll take that today, I think, because we want some broccoli, don't we?
Yeah, definitely. Beauty.
Absolutely gorgeous. Now we tend to sow this marathon variety of broccoli probably 4 times a year. The first one is in February and we harvested that back in June. This was sown in May, late May, and it's ready now. And we have another row just beyond, you can't see them from here, but they're just the other side of these purple sprouting broccoli, which was sown in June, and they'll give us harvest the back end of October and November. But the other good thing is that it gives you all these lovely side shoots. You can see they're now developing already. It's not going to be long before we see some broccoli stems coming from there. And they'll keep producing really over a 5 to 6 week period, won't they?
Yeah, yeah.
And when there's just the two of you, like there is me and Mrs. W now, you just need 3 or 4 of those little sprouts and you've got a vegetable to put on your plate. And they tend to produce that every week. Several of these offshoots. And it's a full row in here of the plants.
Yeah, there's some already as well, isn't there?
So,
I don't know if I can pick that up there.
we should get lots of those side shoots. Now, in today's programme, we shall be planting out some cauliflowers that we hope to be harvesting next year in 2024. And I've had many comments, people asking, how do we make these tunnels? What are the measurements? Where do you get the things from? All shall be revealed in today's programme. Welcome back, it's nice to see you all again. Now, although we've had lots of rain here, and I'm sure most of the UK has, if I go down into the soil I can feel the moisture there, but actually towards the top, look how dry it is. I don't think you really want all that dust on you, do you, Poppy, hey? Hey? So although it has rained, and it's rained quite a lot really for our summers, the sunshine still evaporates most of the water that goes into the top surface of the soil. So to help these along, I always like to put some water into the holes that I've just dibbed. And we can let that soak away. And it will just give the roots to the plants I'm going to plant in here some moisture to get down into, and then from there on in they can then find their way down into the soil below to get access to more water. So while we wait for that water to drain down, I'll just show you that we have harvested the rest of our potatoes, and we have really had a great harvest. Some lovely sized potatoes. As always, they're always going to be of varying sizes, but really it hasn't been a bad harvest at all, has it, Mrs. W?
No, it's looking very good. Got some nice jacket potatoes there as well. Nice size for jackets.
Yeah.
Yeah, lovely.
I think I mentioned in the last video, but just in case I didn't, we tend to bag these up into different bags for the different sizes that they are, for the uses that we have for them. And as you know, alluded to, there are some nice sized ones that are good for jacket potatoes, aren't they?
Really good.
And there are some slightly smaller ones. But, you know, they're still good potatoes to use. And they store really well in the bags. We harvested the rest of our potato harvest been here about an hour, have they?
Yeah, about that.
So you can see they're starting to dry out and the skins will start to toughen up. And then all I do is then just to rub any big lumps of soil off. I don't need them really clean. What I wouldn't do, which I have seen other people do, is actually put them underwater and give them a good scrub. Because immediately you then go to store these potatoes, they're already wet. There's a good example why we need to let these lay on the surface for 24 hours or so. See, I've just given that a rub. You can see the skin has come off. So the skins are not hard yet. But just leaving them on the surface here for 24 hours before you get them into bags, and they will have hardened up and you will no longer get that problem. In fact, we'll just keep that one to one side because we don't really want to put that into the sack now that that's been disturbed. We are actually having a barbecue this evening, aren't we? So we're going to want 1 or 2 potatoes to go with that. We are going to need to cover them. And we will still have problems with the white cabbage butterfly for the next probably 2 to 3 months, but then beyond that, it'll be the pigeons. They love brassicas. Any brassica they love. So, we need to protect them, and I've ordered all the materials that I'm going to need. This is the blue piping that we use. It's 25mm in width, and on this occasion I've bought 25 metres. You can buy it in 50-metre lengths and it does work out cheaper, but bear in mind that we have plenty of piping around which we've been using for the last year or two, so I don't always need the big lengths of 50-metre anymore. Now you're going to need a saw of some description to be able to saw through this. A hacksaw. We actually used a wood saw, but a fine-toothed one, didn't we?
Yeah.
And that cuts through that absolutely fine. And you can see here where we've put this up over our sprouts and kale. We're actually going to start to move to a situation where all of our covers are that tall. If you remember, if you just swing round Mrs. W, you should be able to see there where we harvested the calabrese. Some of those plants are getting quite tall.
They are, aren't they?
And
touching the top of the these Romanesco here.
And
they're touching the top.
And a couple of videos back, we actually filmed where we've already
made it bigger.
Made it bigger.
One on, yeah.
So rather than having to keep messing about with all of that, we want to make them all this size, so that every piece of piping is the same size, every piece of netting is the same size. That way we don't have to sort through them all to see which size the netting is to put over which pipes. Now the other ones won't go to waste, because what we do know is that there's been a bit of allium leaf miner about. It's actually, I've heard from several people that it's actually here it's Norwich way. We're not too far from Norwich. And again, if you remember, we've actually covered our leeks and they have new twisted leaves or ones that are distorted, like actually our onions did, didn't they?
Some of them did.
Some of our onions, some of the leaves are really distorted, so actually covering these has actually quite worked. I love to see all of the vegetables and see them, you know, without a cover over them, but it just seems that's the way we have to go these days if we want to bring a harvest in. And of course that is the most important thing. And of course we can also use the lower netting for things like Swede. Looky here, Mrs. W, look.
I know, they look fantastic, don't they?
Hello, cricket balls, you can play cricket with them.
They're bigger than cricket balls. I'm trying to find them. Can we show that in there? They're lovely, lovely size already, aren't they?
They are. And remember, it's only the second week in August.
Yeah. I think they're the best Swede we've grown ever.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
And of course, also having it this tall means that you don't need to get down on your knees to do the weeding. You can just put the cover up to the top there. And as you've seen in a previous video, Mrs. W fits perfectly underneath here. That means that she gets any weeding duties. But no, seriously, whatever size you are, you only need to lift the cover up to about here, just let it rest here, and then you can do your work. Whereas when they're a bit shorter, what we have found is that you really do need to take the whole cover off. And of course, the white butterflies and everything else, they just fly about while you're doing what you need to do.
I think with them this height as well, I would go in on the end because you can then just keep it draped down.
Well, yes, you can.
Yes, I can. I think I may have just volunteered myself for all of the weeding to be done without thinking.
Now, also, what has arrived are these stakes that we use.
Oh, a box in a box.
Yeah, a box in a box. It's like Camberwick Green, isn't it? Here is a box.
Showing your age now.
I know. And there we are. There they are. And they are 1.4 metres tall. So they can be sunk into the ground by 0.4 of a metre, which gives them some stability. And of course you can then put the piping over the top. And actually these are a different make to the ones that we used earlier. The ones that we've been using actually have a metal piece down the middle. These, Mrs. W.
Are they different, are they? Oh, they're
Yeah.
just solid.
So hopefully they won't snap, because the other ones only had a thin piece of metal just in them, didn't they? And when the wind does blow, it really does. These are really quite solid.
Oh,
I mean, I'm really...
good. Yes.
So, hopefully...
Were they... Was there a difference in price between... No.
In fact, if anything, these were actually cheaper.
Oh.
I've managed to buy a pack of 40 and I think they were £36.
Yeah.
When we go to our local garden centre, these can be £3 each, can't they?
Some of them are, yeah.
So, yeah. One thing I would say is that down in the description I've put a link to everything that I'm showing you today. So if you want to buy it from the same place as we did, then all you need to do is click on that link. It takes you straight to the page and then you can order it. You don't have to, you can buy it from wherever you like. I'm just trying to make things as easy for you guys as possible. So they are the stakes. And of course what we then need is the netting. Now you can buy this netting in various sizes to suit what you want to cover. So if you're watching this program and you're only gardening on 4x6 raised beds, you won't need the lengths that we have gone to buy. You can see with our beds, we need a length of 4 meters to be able to cover them, plus the extra overlay to come down over the ends. Now, we don't actually these days use the whole bed to grow the brassicas in, because we get catch crops in down the side here, so it's only going to come as far as here.
So what size was that netting that you purchased?
So this netting is 5 meters long and it's 4 meters wide.
Okay.
And that enables that to cover a structure of that size. And this is how fine it is.
Yeah. I know it's quite a big financial outlay for everything, but they last for a very, very long time.
Yes,
don't
they do. They do. I think, don't quote me, you have to look on the page, but I'm pretty sure that we paid £32 for 25 metres of the blue piping. This is about £11 for that size. It'll be cheaper, obviously, if you buy smaller sizes. And as I say, they were £35, £36 for 40 of those. You might not need 40, because you don't need to buy 40. Once you've clicked on the link, you can then see the other pack sizes that they have. You don't have to buy them in 40s. It's just that we want to, I'd like to say, upgrade all of our covers to this size, in order that Mrs. W can become chief weeder. So the first thing we better do is get some plants in, better we?
Yes, I think that would be a good idea.
The water looks like it's gone away nicely.
Lovely.
So let's just make sure none of the soil has actually collapsed in too much. So there we are with the holes dibbed. What's going in here is a cauliflower. And it's a variety called Velcoren. It's new to us. In years gone by, we've grown a variety, or varieties, such as Aylesmere. And they've performed really nice, but we just like a change now and again, don't we? Yeah, maybe next year, if these don't do so well, we go back to Aylesmere. But this is what we have for this year. So we sowed these at the end of June, and they've been waiting a while because we've just been waiting for the potatoes just to finish. But it's all about timing, and we have plants that are available to go in the ground the very same day that we've harvested these potatoes, and it's a good practice to get into. These have already had 4 to 5 weeks in here, so they're of a good size. And because they're going in straight away today and not waiting a couple of weeks or 4 weeks until if you left it till today to sow them, they've got all that growing time that they've got to be growing away nicely. Now, from a sowing in June, these should harvest for us in March. And if you remember, right back at the beginning of July, when we sort of went through the cease to sow for the month, we also sowed the next wave of Velcoren cauliflower. They're not very far away now from us, but probably by next week we can get the next row in, can't we?
Hopefully.
And they should then hopefully give us a harvest for April. So in here we should have cauliflowers that we should be available to us during March and April. Now also, if you've been following the channel for a while, you'll know that last year we tried to grow as much food so that we had something fresh to harvest each and every month. And we had the cauliflowers in there. We actually did get a harvest. Not the harvest we wanted. Probably 1 plant from the whole 5. And that's because they were attacked by pests. They got quite damp. And one thing I didn't appreciate, because it was the first time we grew them last year, was that they are actually really quite large plants. They get very, very big. And usually with my brassicas, 18 inches I'll give them each way. But for these, I'm doing exactly the same as I've done for the kale and the sprouts, and that's to give them 2 feet either way, so that there can be plenty of airflow going through there. So hopefully there will be no diseases of any kind that can manifest themselves. They will be covered immediately, so hopefully no white butterfly damage, and certainly no pigeon damage. And hopefully, when we're filming next March, we will have 5 perfect cauliflowers for us to be able to eat.
Fingers crossed.
And of course, if you want to see whether it does work and see what this variety is like, because I can't tell you, we've never grown it before, then don't forget to subscribe to the channel. If you'd like to subscribe, then please do so. We would absolutely love you to follow us on our journey through each and every gardening season. So it's about time we got these in, Mrs. W. And as usual, we're quite happy to plant them nice and deeply. And actually it is a good idea to plant them nice and deep, because then that way their roots are deeper, they can get better anchored, and you can see that when the soil comes over, they've got all that stem that's just gone in there that can help anchor it through the winter winds, and snow and rain and whatever else we get this coming winter. Now, as always, these plants love to be firm. So if you're a digger and you're watching this channel, then you want to be giving it a bit of the old alley shuffle, so that the ground is actually nice and firm when you plant those in. We don't need to worry too much about that, because being no dig, our soil has not been disturbed. And by not being disturbed, you can see actually just how well the brassicas grow, because the ground is so firm. Actually, there are some tiny little sprouts that are starting to form here. They're already on their way, aren't they?
Yes, I noticed those this morning.
And
whether I can pick that up on the camera, maybe.
This is why it's a really good reason to have as firm a ground as you can for brassicas, because, like with sprouts, if the ground is not firm, they will blow, or they will be very loose instead of nice tight buttons. So they're on their way, Mrs. W.
Superb.
But what we need to do is to build a tunnel. So because of the learnings of last season and how large these plants actually do get, and I want to keep adequate airflow in going through, I've given them more space. So these are spaced at 1.3 metres, whereas normally for the other plants we only give them 1 metre.
The closer you put the posts together, the taller
it will get.
The frame becomes, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. These plants aren't going to get anywhere near as tall as the purple sprouting broccoli.
No.
So therefore I can use the same width piping as we're using on the sprouts and kale, and eventually on the purple sprouting broccoli. That's a job we have to do, just to change that over.
And how long did we cut
We
those?
said 3 metres 60, didn't we?
Yes, that's right.
3.6 metres.
Yeah.
And then all we need to do is to slide those down onto the pipe. There we have it. That's the first hoop up. This is going to exactly mirror the one next door. Now this job can be speeded up if there are two of you, and every time we stop the camera and click that off, Mrs. W just doesn't come and give me a hand. But it is something that you can do on your own. You don't need somebody else, but it does make the job a bit quicker if you have got somebody else to give you a hand. And that's our finished hoop cover. Now, just to show that I'm not infallible, and I don't always remember the scripts that Mrs. W writes me, you would need 6 meters to go the whole length of this and come down, not 5. You're going to be about half a meter short if you do it with 5. I was actually thinking of the ones that we put on the shorter ones, but yeah, so yeah, if you're going to build one as big as this, you will need a 6 meter length for that to come all the way down both sides. If you're going to go smaller, like those ones over there, then you can then get away with the 5 meter. Now, if you haven't yet sown anything to grow for next year, it's not too late, but it is starting to get on the cusp. It's the beginning of August now. We're in the second week of August now, so it's a good idea if you're going to try and grow some cauliflowers or cabbages that will harvest next year. Then it's a good idea to be sowing those now. We shall be looking at a different cabbage a bit later on this month, which we're going to grow for winter greens. So I think we're getting the balance just about right, Mrs. W. Sprouts in the ground, and they're looking really good, so hopefully we get a really good harvest of sprouts. And we have 6 plants. 6 plants for us is probably going to equate to sprouts from mid to late November through to at least the end of February, depending on how many Mrs. W eats over Christmas. We've also got the kale. The kale's available to us now, and we were just thinking, looking at this lovely curly kale, that we might have some of that tomorrow, didn't we, along with the Calabrese head that we cut right at the beginning of the film.
Yeah.
We've also got parsnips. Parsnips will be available to us because we like to let them get a frost first before we eat them. You can eat them before, but we find they get more sweeter and taste better once they've had a frost. Frost usually don't occur here until around the 2nd week in November. So they'll be available to us through November, December, January, February, March of next year. Same with the leeks. We've got food that's going to see us through the rest of this year and indeed into 2024 as we turn the year. But then all these other things that we're now putting in the ground, the purple sprouting broccoli, these cauliflowers, they're going to give us valuable fresh greens, fresh food, and hopefully take us up and we get up to the hungry gap. And of course you also know that we grew food in our greenhouse last year. We're looking to repeat that, so hopefully we'll have carrots again come next April. We'll sow those again towards the end of October. It worked really well having lovely fresh carrots in April, didn't it?
It did,
we
yeah.
barely put the carrots in the ground last March when we were harvesting them from the greenhouse. So yeah, that's all looked like it's working really, really well. Now do let us know if you have planted anything, or indeed if you are going to sow something, and what are you going to sow and what are you growing that's going to give you food for next year. We would love to hear. Now, do have a great gardening week, and we shall see you on the next video.